Well, here I am at Buckingham Palace. Just a little short of my 56th solar return. I was here last year for my 55th solar return. And it's kind of a big deal for me to be here because I come from British folks, and to put it lightly, and they are quite passionate. I grew up around regalia of the royal family and the Queen, and my great-grandmother used to bring over the book, which was a coronation book for Queen Elizabeth II, but also dealt with a little bit of the history prior to Queen Elizabeth. And I remember being about 5, 6 years old, and I remember opening the book, and I remember feeling the passion and the energy from my great-grandmother. But what I remember most was how there was this sense of familiarity that I had, and it just felt very natural to me. And of course I was a little boy, and I didn't think much about the spirituality of things, although, I was extremely intuitive, and I absolutely loved God. I was absolutely in love with the idea of God, and being a part of God, and that we're all a part of God. But I didn't think much about previous lifetimes, or although if I really think about it, there was this instinct that I had that there is a flow to the things that pertain to life and how life does regenerate itself. I did know that. And I do also remember that when I was a very young child, that I would lay in bed at night and look up at the ceiling and out the window and just imagine how space went on and on without end, and that God was the entirety of all of it, and that we were the entirety also of God. So, those were some of the deep thoughts I did think, as a child. But when looking at the book and feeling a sense of familiarity, I'd never thought of past lives. And of course, the way I was raised religiously in pretty much fundamental Christianity, eventually I was taught that such things as past lives or previous existences were not probable and not likely, that you only get one life and that's it. Of course, I know quite the contrary now. So I've been trying to think about how I want to talk about this and how much I really want to share. So I'm just going to let this be very organic. I have a little bit of time to speak while I'm here. It's pretty much almost the closing time at Buckingham Palace, so hopefully this is a perfect opportunity to say whatever I'm going to say. When I was here last year for my 55th birthday, 55th solar return, I was recovering from COVID. I had been suffering from long COVID for quite a few years. I had tragically lost my mother to pancreatic cancer, intestinal cancer, other things that had metastasized. But it was quite an ordeal, and even more of an ordeal was the fact that my family was going through a lot of toxicity. And when you're dealing with death and you're dealing with the potential loss, it can bring out the best in people, or it can bring out the worst. And unfortunately, there was a lot of the worst that came out. I understand how trauma affects people, and I'm very forgiving about those things. However, it was extremely hard for me to not only endure watching my mother lose her life and lose her battle, and watch her giving up to it, because she had been suffering from a terrible depression prior, but watching my family create an energy around her that was toxic. And I am a life coach, and I am very much of a minister and a worker of light. I create light in life consciously to help produce the opportunity for everyone to feel and experience light. So that's what I do. But I wasn't really able to do that for my mom, and because of the environment and the family and the toxicity, which, by the way, I had stayed away from for many years so that I could focus on my work and focus on everyone that I help in life. And I did the cardinal sin as an intuitive. When I was in that environment, I opened up my energy to a point that you're not really supposed to, and I overabsorbed a lot of the toxicity because I wanted to know if something was needed. I was prevented so much from being able to participate in my mom's situation that I always felt like I had to be on guard. And so I opened up my energy in way more of a way than I ever would. And I did it in the presence of a lot of toxicity. And from that, I became very ill. And that was also when COVID hit. And I actually caught COVID a series of times. And each time I caught it, I just kept progressively getting more and more ill. And plus, I was also catching different versions and strains of the virus that, now, if you really talk to a virologist, the strains marry very well with other strains, and they can be deadly. And that's why a lot of people did indeed die, is because they just didn't get one strain, they got many strains. And so I got a strain when my partner Jamie came back from India. I got a strain at the nursing home where my mom was, which was technically a rehab center, wasn't really supposed to be a nursing home. And then I got it again from someone who was attending Rice University, and it was going around really bad. So I got really sick in March of 2020 and nearly died. In fact, one of my very dearest friends, Chris Anderson, was sick at the same exact time as I was, and we were keeping up with each other, and 2 weeks later he was gone. And then I was doing a FaceTime call with my doctor to try to figure out what I should do, and he was on his way to the hospital by ambulance, and he was checked in, and he barely made it. I was told then to go to the hospital. I did not go, because I had this instinct that if I did go, I wouldn't make it out. And I still believe that I would not have. But I went through hell for a period of 3 to 4 days to over a week. And what actually got me through was I had bought a massage gun, and I had used it to triage myself during a moment where I was suffocating and collapsing. And I had also done a sleep study and had obtained a CPAP machine, but it had been calibrated so high that I couldn't use it because it just would force air through my nose, and it was just unbearable. Well, strangely enough, that darn thing saved my life. So I was hooked up to that thing, and I was constantly vibrating my chest and breaking up the phlegm that felt like solid glass in my lungs, and had pink eye, had high fevers, all the stuff that come with COVID at that moment, and seemed to get better in about 2 or 3 weeks. But then 2 months, 3 months after that, I started having terrible problems with my bowel, with my lungs. My kidneys were killing me, and then my brain, my cognitive, just became completely defunctive, and I couldn't think. I was driving one time, and I remember having to constantly think green light means go, red means stop. So it took me about 2.5, 3 years to shake it. And ultimately what did shake it was I had found out that we naturally carry parasites in our body. And because of those parasites, they can inhabit and host viruses. And you have to fast and kill off any kind of a sugar that can feed the virus. Otherwise, it will never really completely go away. So what I ended up doing was doing a 4-day fast, just a water fast, where I drank nothing but water and ate nothing. And at the end of the 3rd day, I immediately started feeling better. On the 4th day, I felt better, and I did not have the severe long COVID issues that I'd had. I mean, it was so bad that, I couldn't even walk upstairs, and I was stuttering something terribly. I couldn't remember or catch my thoughts. So it was really bad. And it stayed that way for several years, and I really kind of thought I was done for quite a while, even though deep inside my intuition was telling me I was going to pull through. I had to pull through. But I also was working through a lot of depression, and I was just feeling terrible, and watching what was going on with the world, particularly when Trump was in power the very first time. I just couldn't believe how insensitive everyone was, and how people didn't seem to care about people who were ill until they got ill themselves. And even when they would have family members who would get sick, it's like the denialism about COVID was just overwhelming. And I lost a lot of people. There was a lot of people that I was trying to warn that I intuitively felt that they were in danger, and I would reach out to them. And quite a few of them died. One of them was one of my dearest, most long-term one-on-ones. And the last time I saw or heard from her, I got a FaceTime from an ICU nurse with her saying, or trying to say through her machine, how sorry she was that she had not listened. So I went through a lot of trauma, and I think the psychological part was just as hard as the physical part. And the fact that we were choosing a leader that was veering us off course just stunned me, and how so many in my family just seemed to adore him, and so many people were risking their lives while he was acting like everything was no big deal. So that's where I came from. I came from this illness. I came from this Trump trauma syndrome, and then I started getting better. And then next thing I know, Jamie tells me we're going to England, and we're going to go to Paris for my birthday, and then we're going to come back to England. And I didn't want to come, even though I was, my family's from here. I was raised, about the royal family, and so I begrudgingly came, and gritched about how much I was going to have to walk and would I be able to do it, because remember, I had breathing problems. But the moment I got here, something snapped for me, the shift of energy, and then suddenly I just started recognizing clues everywhere. Ever since my near-death experience, I zoom into what I call clues, where I see symbols and I figure out what they mean. I know that they do have an inherent meaning. And I am a vibrational intuitive. And when I was a child, I used to simplify my gift by saying that there was 3 types of energies. There was loopies, squigglies, and jaggeds that I would pick up on people or situations, rooms, environments, where if something was loopy, it had a roundness to it and a flow of unity, and it had the energy of love in it. If something was squiggly, it had a bit of drama. It wasn't that it didn't have love in it, but it was caught up in circumstances and situations. And squiggly people are not at all bad people, but they get caught up and they can be very calm and conscious. And so you just have to watch. Jaggeds, however, a jagged situation has a soul-cutting effect, where it will literally pierce into your aura and cut it and make you leak light. It's like you bleed. And there's certain categories of jaggedness where you can have one you can call it slight jagged, it's still dangerous, but then you can have jaggeds who are so toxic and so treacherous that they are totally sociopathic in nature and leading towards psychopathic tendencies. And I have had sensitivity ability to feel these vibrations ever since I was a child. And going back to my mom's cancer, even before my mother was becoming ill, I felt her natural loopy energy become excessively squiggly to the point that it was becoming jagged, particularly during the Trump administration. And as my family was claiming their loyalty to being MAGA. And I literally started feeling jagged energy, starting to become more and more magnetized toward them, to the point where illness and sickness was starting to flood into our family, and also terrible marital problems, drug addiction issues, sex addiction issues, and I'm not going to divulge details or particular individuals, of course, but there was a lot of suffering that was going on. And it was jagged in nature. Well, when I came to England, I felt this release of the jagged energy, and God just kind of opened my eyes to see all the clues around me and to take in the vibrations of the history. And when I stepped into this church of Westminster Abbey, I had a profound experience when I was there that I'll talk about at a later time. But when I came to Buckingham Palace, I immediately started getting approached by spirits that are here, and spirits of people who have worked here through the ages, and royal family. And in one instance where I was walking through the gallery and I was looking up at a portrait of one of the kings, and I wasn't quite sure who he was, all of a sudden I heard this voice within my mind saying, "You had a good king, but now you will know what it is like to have a bad king." And then I looked closer at the portrait, and I looked down, and it was King George III. And his voicing stayed with me, not only as I walked through the palace, but throughout the entire trip, to the point when I went to Windsor Castle. I was shown things and I was guided by him. And the interesting thing is while I'm very much of a vibrational intuitive and I do have mediumistic abilities, I don't really like being mediumistic, where I hear from spirits and I feel like I'm in the middle of a communication with them. It's not my favorite thing. Not because I'm scared of it or anything, but because I find it quite draining. And after it's done, I feel depleted. I am not a channel by nature. I am an oracle, where I very much filter through and flow through my own ego being to define things that I hear, things that I see. And I'm also very left brain, empirically minded, where I test everything. I'm not just intuitive. I like to cognitively and analytically analyze things. And then I go through my own process where I figure out what is the center of it and where I stand. So when I was having this mediumistic experience with King George III, I started feeling more and more connected to him, and I started to realize that there was a probability that there was past life connection. And when I was at Windsor Castle, I had an experience where I was guided into the kitchens, and it was very familiar to me, and I had a sense of having been many different things, playing out many different kind of lifetimes. And one of the things you have to understand is with certain advanced souls, we don't usually just have a singular lifetime, but we have multiplistic lifetimes where we subdivide our energy into multiple bodies, or we can share space with other soul family energies. And sometimes it's a soul family thing, or sometimes it's what I call cousin soul experience, where you are part of the engagement of a lifetime, but you're more of a observer than you are a participant, but it's as if it's all happening to you. And this was something that I was shown in my near-death experience, and it's now something that I understand that many of us do without our own knowing. Plus, we are very quantum, and we are experiencing multiple realities at once. And the purpose of this life, if you really want to know the truth, is to be able to dig for the treasure of spiritual truth. And once you dig for it, not only do you find out who you are in the here and now. You figure out everything else that you're connected to that makes you who you are and makes you passionate about things that you're passionate about, but also it reveals where your phobias are, where your hang-ups are, where the things that haunt you or addictions. You start to understand where those energies come from. You start to understand that it can be karmic in nature and that you have things to work through. There can be instances where you were overly judgmental or you were not a very kind person, and so you had to go through experiences in order to understand that energy and resolve it so that you could move up in your energy, in your heart chakra, release the dark energy that you had absorbed so that you could then move up to the upper chakra and experience a more spiritual engagement with your life. And of course, my entire life, my entire one-on-one career has been about helping people achieve this process while also helping them map out and figure out what they're a part of spiritually, what they're part of divinely and quantumly. And when I had my experience with King George a year ago, I had a literal quantum explosion where I started to just connect to all kinds of realities. And I spent the next year studying neurology unlike any way I had ever had before. Of course, I know a bit of neurology, but I really studied it, and I understood where spirituality literally affects the brain, where the quantum experience opens up through the pineal gland, and it creates light in what's called the cave of Brahma. And through your eye of Ra, eye of Horus, on either side, there is a transmission of light that comes down, shines into the pineal gland, which is a crystalline pine cone shaped vessel that is literally the eye of your spirit, but also the crown of your being. And when that crown is lit up and you are aligned with courage and joy and wisdom and compassion, and you flow with truth and vision and faith, and you are aligned, you then can open to your Christos self to an even greater degree, flood with light, and all of a sudden your consciousness explodes and you become connected into all the things spiritually that you're meant to be connected to. So, needless to say, the experience that I had in this house created an explosion, and it also showed me many different timelines of possibility, one of which that Trump would become president again, and that we would go through a lot of difficulties, and that the world was getting ready to go through a massive change. But I also had an understanding that the president would be used as a mechanism to, almost like a wrecking ball, to break things apart so that they could be put back together again by people who are more sane. I wish it could have been a kinder process. I personally believe if Kamala had been allowed to be our leader, things that were always going to need to happen would have happened anyway. It just would have been kinder. But with Trump, it's not going to be that way. And because of it and the vibration being so low, we're going to call in timelines that are going to create a lot of challenge for a lot of people. And of course, one of which is the cruelty that is now going on with people we call foreigners. People who are actually our spiritual brothers and sisters. And what we don't also realize is if you are permissively permitting or turning your back on this, you're going to be opening up quantum doorways where you're going to go through these exact same things yourself. If not in this lifetime, definitely in later lifetimes. Because when you go back to the part of the astral realm that we call heaven, and you get the higher vibrational light shining through your being, you're going to be shown your true self, and you're going to be shown where you lacked love, and you lacked humility, and you lacked compassion. And these are the things that God requires us to not only learn and understand, but apply to life. So a lot of us have quite the journey ahead with all of that. And Mr. Trump is an instrument that's testing everyone to see how well you're going to adhere to the truth of compassion and the truth of kindness. So I've gone through a very strong growth spurt where I've resolved a lot of my PTSD of what I went through with COVID and what I went through watching people become so unkind to each other, to understanding now that everyone is going to have to go through their process, and everyone is going to have to land and end up where they send themselves. And a lot of you guys are going to be creating your own private hell, where a lot of us are going to ascend out of this timeline, and we're going to create something much better. And while we will go through some difficulties that will come, we will handle it much better, and we will become wiser through the process. But it will be short-lived, because what will come after this will be so much more wonderful. If we don't create the wonderful in a timeline in the here and now, which is absolutely possible. And this is another thing that I've very much learned. You can be in the middle of a hell, and God, through God's compassion, can send you so much love and light that even when bad things are going on around you, you can have true self-sovereignty and true self-peace and true self-love, to the point you still treat people lovingly, even though you don't feel so lovingly. You still know that's the best way, because that creates the best vibration. And that will create the better timelines that help you timeline jump out of the bad things that we perceive into the better things that we wish for. So I'm very grateful for the awakening that I had last year. And I'm very grateful for this trip. I've learned a lot, and I've processed a lot, and I've connected a lot. And I see that I have a lot of growth still ahead of me. But I'm excited about it. And I'm excited about all of you who are with me on this journey. I want to thank all of you who have given me love, who have prayed for me, who have sent love and light to me. And I just can't thank you enough. And I want to send you so much love, and I want to encourage you to constantly work on being your better self. And even though things and circumstances don't seem to be working out to your personal advantage, keep doing the right thing, keep doing good, keep loving anyway, as best you can. Speak the truth and speak to people when you think that things are wrong, and explain why. But always try to be as loving as you can, because this will keep the highest vibration, that will create the highest timeline, and it will create light in that pineal gland to constantly create a stream of light, of alignment, to create beautiful things in the here and now and for what is ahead. So thank you for listening to me through my diatribe, and know that I am praying for each and every one of you. And for everyone who's listening to this, believe in yourself, and remember who you are in God. You are truly a being of light under the skin, a colorful being of light, a soul light. And the more you love, the brighter that light will shine. So don't let all of the initiations that are coming at all of us trick you into pulling you into shadows, sucking you into vortexes that create lower timelines, that you constantly have to just go through initiation experience after initiation experience until you finally figure out love is the answer. And that for those of us who are practicing love and we are diligently working on love, I just want to tell you, I'm proud of you. I'm proud to be part of you. I'm proud to be your brother. And I join you and I support you in doing the work. And I tell you, better things are ahead, and we will get through the hard things that come, and we will be guides of light to those who need it. And may we do it well. So may God bless us, everyone. And I send all of you from Buckingham Palace all of my love. All of my love.